So the only reason the South wasn't able to gerrymander like this because of the Voting Rights Act.
Because the South was Jim Crow for how long? And there was 100 years plus of Jim Crow laws that disenfranchised people of color. Let's not ignore why the Voting Rights Act is necessary.
Well, there are a lot of reasons that black people in Louisiana have poorer outcomes than their white counterparts. And a big one is Jim Crow. Okay?
Correct. Wait a minute. This is all over the country.
Hold on. You can't tell the story without telling that part of the story.
Guys, last night on CNN, MAGA panelists were destroyed by progressive panelists when they tried to defend Donald Trump's demand to cancel elections to redraw state maps. Guys, one thing is pretty clear at this point. Trump knows he's going to lose the election. He knows he's in very deep shit right now because of the Iran war and the bad economy, so now he's getting desperate. He knows they will lose hard if he doesn't rig the election. Remember when we said Trump could try and rig the midterms in favor, and MAGA said, no, he won't. You guys are just overreacting. Our leader would never do anything like that in his lifetime. So what now, MAGA? Your orange leader's doing exactly what we predicted. He's desperate to rig the hell out of this election because he's getting impeached if he loses. He knows that. Now, I'm going to play some clips from the show. I'll give my opinion as we go.
Tonight, after the Supreme Court delivered Republicans yet another advantage in the midterms in Louisiana, Donald Trump is pitching an extreme proposal for other states. Cancel elections and redraw the maps, potentially invalidating votes that have already been cast. In a 6-3 decision last week, the Supreme Court rejected Louisiana's current congressional map on the grounds that it was drawn through race-based discrimination. But although the court's decision applies just to Louisiana, over on social media last night, Trump directed other states to redraw their maps in supposed compliance with the decision. If they have to vote twice, so be it, he wrote. The byproduct is that the Republicans will receive more than 20 House seats in the upcoming midterms. Noah, what do you make of Trump sending this very clear message to states to not just to redistrict, but to redistrict even if it means throwing out election results that have already happened?
Well, I just hate the way the president talks about this sort of thing. And the American public does not like it when they hear a party talk about this sort of stolen base strategy. Mm-hmm. And it backfired on the Republican Party. The president, when he said we should do mid-decade redistricting, was to net Republican seats so they could absorb the impact of a Democratic wave in November. And Democrats around the country and some Republicans and independents said, what are you talking about? We're not going to allow that to happen. This ruling was vital, in my view, for constitutional purposes. For 30 years, Republicans on the court, before we had a court majority, were saying that there is an irresolvable tension between the VRA as it is construed and interpreted and the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. For 20 years, we've been hearing that, and they've been gradually chipping away at it, Section 4, Section 5, Section 2 now. And you hear the president say stuff like that, and it gives people license to think that this is not a constitutional argument, that this is just another stolen base, and the Supreme Court is behind it. That's wrong. That's a misinterpretation of events, but it's one that the president does allow with loose talk like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important point, especially from a conservative perspective. He is confirming the view of this ruling as being just about giving Republicans a electoral benefit. Mm-hmm. And he views the whole thing through what can you do for me in this election, as opposed to what's best for the system, what's best for the country.
To the extent the states were going to make some sort of decision to do something sooner, that is their responsibility. It's their obligation. The president doesn't have any control of the situation here. Giving these directives, I think, as Noah already pointed out, really bad optics for Republicans. But I also think that, you know, as I think about this, I don't tend to think that anyone has particularly clean hands here. Like, the reality is that whether you want to keep the current maps or get rid of the old maps, and you're kind of vocally, vociferously in support of either outcome, it's really because you want to game the system. And ultimately, with respect to gerrymandering, what we really need is some sort of national policy with respect to actually having independent, competitive districts. Every single incumbent ought to be under pressure in every single race. It may not always yield the best governance, but what definitely doesn't yield the best governance is everyone playing this game where they try to safeguard the districts for themselves on whatever basis. So I do think the ruling was probably generally in the right direction. What we need now, however, is some actual gerrymandering reform.
Republicans have power right now, and they could pass a national gerrymandering.
Guys, I'm seeing a lot of people on the internet acting very surprised right now that Trump is trying to rig the election. I mean, to be honest, we all knew this was coming. This is the peak of Republican rule. They're in control of everything, including a corrupt, extremely partisan Supreme Court and a Congress that is basically non-existent. Republicans know they're very unpopular, so they're going to full lie, cheat, and steal while they still can. And guys, you have to understand that these people are not interested in democracy anymore. They want a full-on dictatorship. They want Trump to become a dictator of this country, just like Putin. And this is not just the wish of Trump or his cabinet cronies. Every last MAGA voter is behind this idea. They all want the same thing. They don't care if Trump is effing up the economy, or their groceries are getting unaffordable, or their gas prices are rising. They're a cult. All they care about is that their leader stays at the top so they can implement white nationalism in this country once again. That's all they care about.
But instead, they're listening to Donald Trump and allowing him to drag us down to the depths of hell on this redistricting case. I don't think there's any better vindication of the VRA Section 2 than what's happening after Section 2 was effectively struck down. We have Memphis, where they're about to take, I believe it's like a 60% black population, and they're about to split that, dilute that into 3 separate districts. This is exactly why Section 2 existed in the first place.
That's what they did in Nashville
they did
also.
The same thing in Nashville.
You can't ban gerrymandering. Reapportionment is in the Constitution.
But let's just deal in the reality here. From a conservative point of view and a constitutional point of view, the arguments around intellectually, the academic arguments about the Voting Rights Act that have been going on for 30 years now are fair in ivory towers. In the real world consequences of this, though, we are not a utopian society where we are race neutral on anything. As much as we are aspiring to reach our more perfect union, we are far from that. And unfortunately, under this administration and under what Donald Trump has been doing now for the last 10 years and what Republicans have done, it has all been about diluting the votes of minorities, because minorities don't necessarily vote for Republicans. And this is the way that they have been planning this for decades. This has been a long game, and especially in the South.
Do you disagree?
If you look at the judges that Donald Trump has had, federal judges that he has nominated to the bench at the federal level, in the South in particular, they have all been anti-voting rights judges, from Alabama to Texas to Florida. So this has been a long-term game to get exactly what they want. Yes, and a Supreme Court that has been very anti-voting rights.
We don't have a lot of time,
all of that. So let's just be honest about what this is really about.
Let's be real. New England has gerrymandered everything. There's 21 congressional seats in New England. All of them are Democrat. 0 Republicans when there are 40% Republicans in New England. So the only reason the South wasn't able to gerrymander like this because of the Voting Rights Act.
Because the South was Jim Crow for how long? And there was 100 years plus of Jim Crow laws that disenfranchised people of color. Let's not ignore why the Voting Rights Act is necessary.
Tara, that's the Supreme Court's argument.
Let me finish my point.
You're making their argument.
The gerrymandering wasn't allowed because of the Voting Rights Act. And the New England took advantage of that and created a bunch of Democrat seats. But wait a minute, just back to your point. You're saying somehow that black representation is needed to improve the black. District 2 in Louisiana, let's get back to Louisiana. District 2 in Louisiana has been represented by a black person for 35 years. Yep. The income in that district is still half of whites. There's been no improvement. Being represented by a black representative has not improved the quality of life in those districts.
Hold on. Are you saying that a congressional representative is responsible for the quality of life of
no, that's what she's saying. She's saying that you need to.
No, I guess
certainly implied it.
She certainly implied that. But I mean, listen, there are a lot of reasons that black people in Louisiana have poorer outcomes than their white counterparts, and a big one is Jim Crow. Okay,
correct.
Wait, this is all over the country.
Hold on. You can't tell the story without telling that part of the story.
Guys, Republicans have been rigging elections for decades. GOP gerrymandering isn't new. Disseminating false information to voters isn't new. Limiting polling stations in blue areas is not new. They cheat because they're in a minority and they know it. The only way they can survive is by cheating. They saw the handwriting on the wall showing women and non-whites rising in power, so they cheated their way into solidifying an uneducated base to retain power. First, they dismantled education in America to make as many stupid people as possible. Then, they began disenfranchising the rest of the population. I was watching a clip of Trump from today where he's saying something like, "When I leave office in 8 or 9 years from now," like, he is a miserable troll. He's completely lost control of himself at this point. And what makes me sick is that the media has normalized his behavior. He says whatever the hell he wants without any consequences.
And then on top of that, I mean, don't forget that that's a state that is controlled by Republicans. So if Republicans, and at the state level, which has way more to do with people's day-to-day lives, can't improve the lives of black people in their own state, I don't know how you can make the argument that
That's
somebody who represents them in
outcomes,
Congress.
though. This is all outcomes.
Yeah,
to
but-
Camille's
Well, I mean,
point, we're talking
listen,
past each other.
But I'm not. I mean,
because
I'm
we're
just
arguing about procedure
I'm
versus
just
outcome.
responding to what Hal said, blaming black representation
no, I'm
for the
saying-
state
I'm
of
saying
black
it didn't
people in a
change the
particular
outcome.
congressional
Outcome.
district.
And this
I
is
just
about
don't think there's a
process.
relationship. I don't think that you can say that the black representative is responsible for the outcomes in a particular district where those outcomes came about because of decades and decades
In
of
Michigan, they
policies
didn't have Jim
at the
Crow.
state level and at the federal level that disenfranchised and hurt black
that's not
people,
what this
okay?
majority
So
opinion
that's all
is
I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's what happened. This is what happens, though, when you get into a process argument over making it more difficult for people to vote and to have representatives that represent them. If Republicans were so confident in the system, then they would not be trying to game it right now to their advantage. And Donald Trump is telling the quiet part out loud. We could have had an intellectual argument about whether the VRA was still needed or not and whether that's fair or not. But if we were in a colorblind society, but we're not, especially when you have someone like the Trump administration coming in after diversity, women, people of color, and all the things that they're doing to say that it's a reverse racism, and now they're coming for voting rights. That's what this is absolutely about, and we can't ignore the game that we're in right now and the political reality of what they're trying to do.
All right, Camille, do you want a quick last word?
I was just saying that I don't know that colorblindness is the real standard here. Again, I think if we're looking to create competitive districts, that's the most important thing. And vacating the sort of status quo, creating a circumstance wherein the law is not particularly interested in race, that actually seems like a very good outcome for me. The only question is, how do we get more competitive districts from where we are now?
In the long term, if you have good faith actors, that's not what Republicans are, unfortunately.
All right, next
now.
for us, the outfits worn by
Guys, to be honest, I feel like this entire stunt of rigging the election is going to backfire on Trump. He can do whatever he wants, but he's going to lose. My bigger worry at this point is that Democrats will sweep the midterms and then do absolutely nothing about the rampant corruption we've seen over the last year and a half. If there isn't a mass amount of impeachments and convictions after Democrats win, I'd totally lose hope for this country. All right, guys, I'm done for today. Please subscribe if you've reached this far in the video. I'll see you guys tomorrow with another one.